The Senate will come to order. Sergeant at Arms will close the doors. Members will go to their seats. Members and guests of the gallery will please silence all electronic devices. Leading the Senate in prayer is Senator Kevin Corbin of Macon County. All members and guests in the gallery will please stand. Hello, sir.
Let's pray. God our Father, Lord of all the nation and our state, we thank you, Lord, for this nation. We thank you for this great state of North Carolina, its many people. We thank you for our majestic mountains and beautiful valleys. God, may all whom we have been given authority in government be blessed with your wisdom. Guide these leaders of our state to do what is right and good and just in your sight. Fill each of them with genuine concern for all the good of all Americans and all North Carolinians. Bless our state, dear Lord. Keep us strong, keep us upright, keep us true. In Jesus' name, amen.
Senator Berger is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. The journal for November 19, 2024 has been examined and is found to be correct. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal and that it stand approved as written.
Without objection, the journal for November 19, 2024 stands approved as written. A leave of absence is requested and without objection is granted for Senator Hunt. Courtesy of the floor are extended to Megan Morris and Kate Henry, nonpartisan fiscal staff at the Washington State Legislature. They are guests of our Fiscal Research Division as part of the NCSL-sponsored Legislative Staff Exchange Program. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Where are you at? We have two courtesies of the gallery. First, we have, upon the motion of Senator Phil Berger of Rockingham County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies to Rockingham County Sheriff Sam Page and his membership team. Sheriff Page, where are you at? It's Sheriff Page. And upon the motion of Senator Joyce Kravick of Forsyth County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies to Dana Caudill Jones, the senator-elect for Senate 31 to replace Senator Kravick herself. So where is she? Where is the senator-elect? Oh, I have one more. Upon the motion of Senator Kevin Corbin of Macon County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies to Dr. Karen Fairley, Director for the Center for Safer Schools, Where is she at? Right here. Fantastic. Senator Rabin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few motions.
Go ahead with your motions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move that all bills today be sent to the governor by special message.
Without objection, so ordered.
Move that House Bill 10 require ICE cooperation and budget adjustments be placed on the top of today's calendar.
Without objection, so ordered. With that, we'll start with our calendar, and I guess we will start with House Bill 10. Clerk will read.
House Bill 10, require ICE cooperation and budget adjustments.
Senator Lee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The contents of House Bill 10 we have debated on many occasions. We debated the policy back in 23, I think, in our long session, and we debated the additional funding as well as the ICE provisions, the ICE cooperation provisions, not too long ago. And so, Mr. President, I move that House Bill 10 require ICE cooperation and budget adjustments become law, notwithstanding the objection of the governor.
Is there further discussion or debate? Senator Marcus, for what purpose do you rise?
To speak on the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I am going to talk about House Bill 10 because I know we've talked about it before, but it's a big issue. It's a lot of money. It affects a lot of families, and passions are pretty high. So I think it needs to be said. There's also some new information that came out in a report from ProPublica just this week. So maybe you haven't heard about it, and I wanted to share some of that as well. I'll start out by saying that House Bill 10, in my estimation, is a massive and expensive and reckless expansion of what the creators of the program like to call opportunity scholarships, also known as private school vouchers. But I have to say, opportunity for whom and opportunity for what? This ProPublica article that I mentioned that just came out very recently is enlightening. It's disturbing. And it talks about how so many of the private schools that are now funded by this voucher program that our legislature is funding and trying to expand today with this veto override were created during the South's desegregation era. And they were specifically created to cater to white parents who wanted to avoid sending their children to racially diverse schools. It reports that 39 schools in the North Carolina voucher program today were established specifically for white children to avoid desegregation in the 1960s and 70s, thus earning the moniker segregation academies. And it's not just their history, it is still their present. ProPublica concludes that they, quote, play an integral role in perpetuating school segregation and, in turn, racial segregation in their surrounding communities. Just two examples. There's a school in Northampton County. It was founded in the rural part of our state in 1966. Half of its tuition today comes from revenue from these state-funded vouchers. 99% of its students are white in a county where only 40% of the population is white. Second example, in Beaufort County, there's a school. This is a county where there's only 65% white population, but 98% white enrollment in this private school. And that percentage has gotten worse since they started taking voucher money. 20 of the 39 schools that are reported on here have 85% or higher white enrollment, which is not even close to the demographics of the areas where they are located across our state. And they are taking in just these schools $20 million for just these 39 schools just in the past 3 years alone. One other disturbing statistic that they shared is that the share of black students who have received vouchers from our state has gotten much worse since this program was started in 2014. When this originally was proposed for our state, half of the students receiving vouchers were black. Do you know what the percentage is now? 17%. So I am grateful that ProPublica got this information and published it. I wanted to share it with you today because I think it's very relevant when we consider whether this is a bill we want to override the governor's veto on. And it's also important to note that North Carolina state law does not require that this racial information about voucher recipients be made public. So maybe you didn't know, but now you know. Some other points about this that I think are worth mentioning here. Not only are these schools a means of perpetuating white flight from public schools, but also many of these schools, not all of them, but many of them, teach bad science. They teach male supremacy. They teach whitewashed history. I took time to look at the websites of some of the schools that take this voucher money and rely on it to keep afloat, to see what they're teaching. One of them, quote, "Our basic textbook is the Bible." They teach that man came by direct creation of God and not by evolution. That's a quote. They teach that abortion is murder no matter the circumstances, no matter the reasons. They state that same-sex relationships are akin to bestiality and that men shall be the leaders, not women. So, some may say that those teachings are fine. You might agree with them, and maybe fine for churches to preach that, if that's what they believe. But I don't believe that the majority of North Carolina taxpayers think that those are appropriate tenets of an education for children that is funded, even in part, with public taxpayer dollars. It's also problematic the way these schools exclude certain kids and certain families, the ones that they don't want. They exclude or expel kids with learning delays or disabilities because they often don't have the time or the expertise to educate those children. They exclude or expel kids with behavioral issues, or kids whose families can't afford the cost of lunch or transportation to and from school, because of course those expenses, they're covered by public schools, they have to be, but not by these private schools. 24 of the top 25 schools that take the most money from the voucher programs are based on Christianity. One is Muslim. And 3/4 of all voucher-funded schools are religious schools, almost all Christian. I think many people agree with me that this feels like an overt violation of the American principle of separation of church and state, for us to use taxpayer money to fund church-based schools. And again, I looked at some of what they espouse based on that, or what they require of their students and what they reject as a student based on that. You have to have, one school talks about how you have to have a letter of recommendation from your pastor for your child, and each student must be a born-again Christian professing a personal relationship with Christ. They exclude kids with gay parents. They don't even recognize the marriage of those kids' parents. And they exclude kids who challenge their religious teaching or articles of faith. So all those kind of kids, they can't use these vouchers, but they are welcome at public school. And those public schools are underfunded and consistently degraded and scorned by this body, which is supposed to represent all the families of North Carolina and care that all kids get their sound basic education, as guaranteed by the North Carolina State Constitution. And it's also problematic that to cover up the questionable quality of the education that some of these schools provide, and the basis that I find offensive on which many of these schools will exclude children and families, the General Assembly continues to allow them to remain largely unregulated and unaccountable. And they're not ensuring that there is a quality education where the kids are learning the basics and are prepared for college in the 21st century. Public schools, boy, do we collect a lot of data there, right? We require that teachers be licensed. We test the kids every other day, it feels like. That has to be made public. We give the schools a letter grade based on how they do. We hold teachers accountable and set the amount of their salary based on how the kids are performing. So many checks, so much data, all of it public. Private schools? Nope, almost no rules. Teachers don't have to be certified. There's no required curriculum. There's very little data collected and even less data that's made public. There's no letter grades for the schools. Some are rated based on third-party sites that decide to do this work for parents if they want to know what kind of a school they might be sending their kid to. But many of these schools that take voucher money aren't even on those third-party sites. Parents are going in blind. And this body doesn't seem to care about whether these kids are getting a good education with the money that we are funding. There's also very little money to track, or very little oversight to track the money that goes to these schools. We've talked before about how some have accepted many more vouchers than they have enrolled students at any given time. Some been caught embezzling pretty big amounts of money, one of which was the #1 voucher recipient in the state at one point when it was found there was a major embezzlement happening there. And then this bill that we're talking about today is going to balloon the program and the cost of it. It could have addressed some of these oversight problems, but it doesn't. There's no changes whatsoever to what we expect private schools to do in return for all this money that we're getting ready to send them. And let's be clear, we cannot afford this. Please remember your usual inclination toward fiscal responsibility. Don't set it aside in order to fund this bill. This is a budget-busting expense that more than doubles the already significant voucher program in North Carolina. The Office of State Budget and Management has forecasted a budget shortfall in the near future due to the tax cuts we've already passed and the impacts of earlier expansion of the voucher program and the Helene funding that we should be focused on. Rural counties stand to lose a lot here. There's a lot of reporting in this ProPublica about that and how damaging this will be to rural counties. In 2014, this program cost $14 million. That seemed like a lot of money then. At that point, there were 1,200 low-income students who got a voucher. That was 2014. But boy, that camel's nose got under the tent. And that was the start of this major disruption to our once lauded public school education. North Carolina was the education state. We were doing things right. We were the model in the Southeast. Do you remember? This is a huge expansion now over the past 10 years. House Bill 10 is going to cost us an extra $463 million just this year. That's almost $500 million. It's going to cost a total of $625 million next year, for next school year. And between now and 2031, the vouchers are going to cost about $5 billion, maybe more.
Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Rayburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of order, please, sir. The senator has far exceeded the time allowed for debate on a motion. Would ask that she please either conclude or stop the debate.
Senator Marcus, are you ready to wrap up?
I'll wrap up. I'll jump to my final point, which is please remember this is not a bill about helping low-income families or even about school choice. This is about expanding the program to the wealthiest families in our state. Nearly 1/4 of the people that stand to benefit make more than $259,000 a year for a family of 4. That's who this bill's helping at the expense of all the other things that we need to be spending money on. It is just gravy on an already fully loaded dinner plate of choices, and it costs us nearly $500 million this year and $5 billion more over the next 7 years. I hope you'll join me in voting to uphold the governor's veto of this terrible, terrible bill.
Remind the gallery you're here to observe, please, no interruptions. To further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the motion before the Senate is that House Bill 10 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. 30 having voted in the affirmative, 19 in the negative. The motion to override the governor's veto of House Bill 10 passes by 3/5 of the members present and voting. Pursuant to Article 2, Section 22(1) of the Constitution of North Carolina, House Bill 10 becomes law notwithstanding the objections of the governor at 2:45 p.m., 2:44. The House will be so notified. Back to the top of our calendar again. We'll start with House Bill 1078. Clerk will read.
House Bill 1078, additional General Assembly appointments.
Senator Raven is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, these are appointments that include from the President Pro Tem's office, including appointments to Community College Board of Trustees, an appointment to the Board of Massage and Bodywork Therapy, and the North Carolina Supplemental Retirement Board of Trustees. Would certainly appreciate your support.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of House Bill 1078 on the second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. Senator Lazara. Senator Lazara. Oh, he's aye. Oh, you switched places. He's over there now. 38 having voted in the affirmative, 11 in the negative. House Bill 1078 passes its second reading and without objection will be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of House Bill 1078 on its third reading will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1078 passes its third reading and will be enrolled. Next, we have House Joint Resolution 1079. Clerk will read.
House Joint Resolution 1079, confirm Roger Hawley, Director, SBI.
Senator Daniel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Chip Hawley is a longtime public safety officer who began serving in 1982. For the last 6 years, he has served as the chief of the North Carolina State Capitol Police. Prior to that, he served for over 3 decades in law enforcement, mostly with the Wake County Sheriff's Office as well as its patrol division. Mr. Hawley has extensive experience across the many areas of law enforcement and is highly regarded by his colleagues and the public and has been endorsed by numerous law enforcement agencies for this position. He's been willing to meet with many of our members about his appointment, and we've appreciated his candor, and I'm pleased to support his nomination as the new SBI director and would ask for your support.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of House.
Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Bergen, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to stand and rise in support of Chip Hawley. He's a good friend of mine. He was born in Harnett County. All of my sheriffs support him. All of the folks in law enforcement that I know support him, and I ask you to support him. Thank you.
Any further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of House Joint Resolution 1079 on its second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed, no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting. The clerk will record the vote. "49 having voted in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. House Joint Resolution 1079 passes its second reading and without objection will be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of House Joint Resolution 1079 on its third reading will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Joint Resolution 1079 passes its third reading and will be enrolled. Next on the calendar, we have House Joint Resolution 1080. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second, please. Upon the motion of Senator Bill Rabon of Brunswick County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies to Chip Hawley. All right, he's in the building. There he is. There he is. Fantastic. All righty. Next on the calendar, House Joint Resolution 1080. Clerk will read.
House Joint Resolution 1080, confirm Director of Medicaid.
Senator Kravic is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am so honored to offer this resolution confirming the appointment of Jay Ludlam as Director of the Division of Health Benefits at the Department of Health and Human Services. And it has been such an honor to work with Jay and his staff. Our health chairs have had a great relationship with that organization, and Jay has led us through transformation as well as Medicaid expansion. He's got some big shoes to fill. Dave Richard was his predecessor, but nobody is more qualified, more able to do that than Jay. So I ask for your support in confirming Jay.
Senator Woodard is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to speak to the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to join Senator Kravic in urging you to support Jay Ludlam. He has been serving the job for a while. I guess I kind of wonder what took us so long to get here, but we've had the chance to work with Jay and to see his great leadership. And one of the most important jobs we have in state government, overseeing Medicaid during this transitional time, as Senator Kravic said. I hope you all will join me enthusiastically supporting Jay Ludlam to continue serving as our Medicaid director.
Senator Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to support Jay. We've got to know him very well, working with him over the last number of years. He's done a fantastic job. He brings a wealth of experience, and I look forward to working with him. So please help us all support him.
Senator Corbin.
Speak to the motion.
You have the floor.
I might as well complete the circle, Senator Kravic. I also stand to support. Jay does a great job with what he does with DHHS, and we support Senator Kravic, your motion. I would also like to congratulate you maybe on your last motion on the floor. So thank you.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of House Joint Resolution 1080 on the second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. "49 having voted in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. House Joint Resolution 1080 passes its second reading and without objection will be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of House Joint Resolution 1080 on its third reading will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Joint Resolution 1080 passes its third reading and will be enrolled. Next on our calendar is House Joint Resolution 1081. Clerk will read.
Mr. President.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Senator Kravic, right here.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had the paper right here in my hand,
Okay.
and I was
Thank you.
on the fast track to the end of this. Upon the motion of Senator Bill Rabon of Brunswick County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies to Jay Ludlam. Mr. Ludlam, please stand and be recognized. All righty. Sorry about that, guys. House, next on the calendar, House Joint Resolution 1080. Clerk will read. 1081, excuse me. House clerk will read.
House Joint Resolution 1081, adjournment resolution changes.
Senator Rabon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we have before us the adjournment resolution telling us when we will come back and what we're going to do. And this resolution will adjourn us today, then bring us back into the chambers on December the 2nd through the 13th. On the 2nd through the 13th, we will be doing skeletal sessions. And after that date, we will adjourn sine die.
Is there further discussion or debate? Senator Meyer.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
President. I
recognized.
have a question for the Rules Chair, Senator Rabin.
You yield for a question, Senator Rabin?
I yield.
Go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Senator Rabin. So are you suggesting when you mentioned skeletal sessions that you anticipate there would be no votes taken during that period?
We don't normally take votes on skeletal sessions, as we normally don't have a quorum. There will be, of course, we will adjourn today until December 2nd. From December 2nd until December 13th, we will go through the skeletal session protocol.
May I ask a follow-up question?
You yield.
I yield.
Go ahead.
To clarify, are you suggesting we would take votes on December 2nd or on none of those dates?
We will be scheduled to vote on December 2nd.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of House Joint Resolution 1081 on its second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds to be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. Senator Rabin. Senator Rabin is aye. 48 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. House Joint Resolution 1080 passes the second reading and without objection will be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of House Joint Resolution 1081 on its third reading will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Joint Resolution 1081 passes its third reading and will be enrolled. Next on our calendar, we have conference report for adoption, Senate Bill 382. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 382, Disaster Relief. 3, Budget Various Law Changes.
Senator Heiss is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. The conference report for Senate Bill 382 is a substantial piece of legislation. I'm going to break the explanation up into 3 parts. Beginning with the disaster relief portion, but in entirety, this bill spends $252 million from the Savings Reserve and CERTIF for Helene relief, bringing that total to $1.1 billion spent by this General Assembly so far. It also has an additional $50 million from CERTIF for the homeowner recovery projects at Encore related to our previous storms. Bringing the total additional appropriation for Encore to $80 million. Separately, this bill will spend $5.35 million recurring and $63.1 million non-recurring from the general fund as we wrap up those procedures for the fiscal year 24-25. Under disaster release, it is $227 million for the relief. There are provisions specifically to give UNC Asheville Chancellor the ability to use remaining funds from the spring semester tuition grants for other Hurricane Helene related needs. It temporarily extends or modifies various regulations and licensing deadlines until March 1st, 2025, as requested by the Department of Health and Human Service. It appropriates $2 million from the funds to the Department of Agriculture for technical support for soil and water conservation districts in affected areas so they continue to damage assessments and support. Makes a $25 million transfer from CERTIF to the Department of Agriculture Stream Flow Rehabilitation Assistance Programs to aid with stream debris cleanups. extends various government approvals, permits, and sets guidelines for approving and operating temporary water and wastewater systems. Waives submission and approval plans for land disturbing activities under certain circumstances. Modifies emergency infrastructure bridge loan program at DEQ to include nonprofit water corporations. Allows the Department of Transfer, when it accesses its $125 million in emergency funds, that they don't have to pay those back by July 1st. It extends that date to the end of fiscal year 27 and gives them some flexibility in that. The next section of the bill is various changes to the budget and technical corrections. It provides $13 million non-recurring for the performance funding at the UNC system. Provides a little over $500,000 for enrollment changes at UNC schools, and for enrollment mitigation needs provides $1.4 million to East Carolina, $1.5 million to UNC Asheville, about $20,000 to UNC Greensboro, $3.7 million to UNC Pembroke, and $1.3 to Winston-Salem State University. Provides funds to ensure buildings can operate and be maintained. We can actually open the buildings at UNC Wilmington and the North Carolina School of Science and Math Morganton campus. That's $2.8 recurring and $470,000 non-recurring. Establishes the Office of Learning Research at the North Carolina Collaboratory and provides $1.5 million recurring for it. Funds an additional 3 months for the Child Care Stabilization Grants at $34 million non-recurring. Swaps out $2.5 in non-recurring for recurring funds to make the e-courts technology positions permanent. Allocates $8.2 million non-recurring to provide timely payments to private assigned counsel representing indigent defendants. Provides funds to the Office of State Fire Marshal Training Facility. Provides $5 million from the SCIF to NC State University for the rehabilitation or replacement of Poe Hall. Provides $5.2 from the SCIF for the Saluda Grade Trail and additional capacity building for grants and trails and for the Great Trails State Coalition. Allows funds for airport improvements approved in the 2023 budget and other recent legislation to remain available until the projects are complete, and makes corrections, technical tweaks, and provides extensions to various budget provisions. The third part of this is some of the statute and law changes that are made within this bill. Number one, this will transfer the Board of Elections to the state auditor effective, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you. Transfers the State Board of Elections to the state auditor effective July 1st, 2025, and makes various election changes. It moves forward the absentee ballot request deadline from 1 week before the election to 2 weeks before Election Day, following the model set by Florida. The absentee ballot receipt deadline will remain at 7:30 p.m. on Election Day, but the bill requires that all absentee ballots received before the deadline be counted on Election Day. Additionally, the bill requires that all cures for absentee ballots and provisionals be completed by 12 p.m. on Friday after Election Day, and requires that all ballots counted after being cured be added to the vote totals by 5 p.m. on that day. The purpose of these changes is to ensure a timelier resolution of election outcomes than we have continuing to drag on for 2 weeks like we've seen in the most recent election. Clarifies the process for some applicants and for appointments and confirmations. Affirms the Emergency Management Act does not empower the governor to waive statutes related to unemployment insurance. This provision will be in effect March 1st, 2025, to ensure that those affected by the current hurricane issue do not experience a change in benefits due to any misapprehensions of law. Provides that when a vacancy occurs for the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, the governor must appoint a replacement from the same political party as the vacating judge. Eliminates the North Carolina Courts Commission. Authorizes the Chief Justice to select the senior resident Superior Court judge in each Superior Court district. and modifies the duties of the Attorney General to clarify that the General Assembly is the necessary and primary agent for the defense of state law, removes the Attorney General's ability to participate in Utilities Commission proceedings, gives the Judicial Department and independently elected Council of State members authority to hire private counsel without Attorney General or Governor approval, ensures that the Attorney General cannot undermine state law in out-of-state court proceedings. Further, it establishes the Highway Patrol as an independent cabinet-level department, designates one member of the Utilities Commission to be appointed by the State Treasurer, repeals the Energy Policy Council and transfers its necessary functions to the Utility Commission, provides additional renewable energy certificates to new swine waste-produced renewable energy facilities in Tier 1 counties, offering 2 enhanced credit per REC for the first 8 years and 1 additional credit per REC for the following 6 years. These enhanced credits will help electric power suppliers meet the swine waste renewable energy requirements, but are capped at 80,000 enhanced credits per facility annually. Makes additional receipts eligible for major events, games, and attractions funds. In the areas of education, it further clarifies that the School of Deaf and Blind are independent state agencies. The schools are to be administratively housed at DPI through the 24-25 school year and then move to DOA to receive administrative support. Eliminates the superintendent's appeal to decisions regarding individual charter schools to the State Board of Education. Reorganizing the advanced teacher role statute to clarify and makes updating to align with the current best practices and improve program effectiveness. Transfers the Center of Safer Schools to the SBI, mandates a data sharing agreement between DMVA and SEAA for distribution of Children of Wartime Veterans scholarships, modifies the ongoing Reporting Opportunity Scholarships testing to require the Office of Learning Research to recommend a nationally standardized test in grades 3 through 8. Opportunity Scholarship students will still be required to take a nationally standardized test that is selected by their school, and prevents local governments from downzoning land to reduce its permitted uses without the written consent of the property owner. I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. President, and ask you all for your support on this conference report as we try to wrap up things this session.
Senator Mayfield, you're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. I rise to speak on the conference report.
You have the floor.
Thank you. So good afternoon, colleagues. I am so happy to be here to vote for the next round of Helene disaster relief. You know, one of the things that's been so wonderful about this process and in the wake of the hurricane has been our ability to come together and work together and in ways that we don't normally do, and that a lot of the traditional barriers that divide us have fallen. But unfortunately, this bill does not meet the spirit of the moment, and I will not be able to vote for it. It would have been easy to break out the Helene relief portions of this bill from the rest of the bill that takes purely partisan aim at some of the foundational pillars of our democracy, but that is not the decision that was made. I can't support those provisions, so I am forced to vote against allocating more money for Western North Carolina, and that is regrettable. Even if the Helene provisions were broken out, however, I would need to remind us all that they still do not meet the need of the moment. Any additional support is welcome, but of course, most of the $277 million for Helene relief is not actually being appropriated, it's just being moved. Meanwhile, the needs of Western North Carolina have not changed. I remind you that we lost our biggest month for tourism and business when we lost October. This is the equivalent of having a hurricane in August on the coast. We still need to support our businesses, and we still need support for the people who have been out of work for over 7 weeks now and cannot pay their rent. On the business side, while there is some money available for business grants from local philanthropic sources, it does not come close to meeting the need, and grants are still the #1 request from our business community. Last week, a grant program opened with $1.3 million in initial capacity from the City of Asheville, the Asheville Chamber, and some other sources. In just the first day, 145 applications totaling $3.1 million in requests. 145 applications totaling $3.1 million in requests. These businesses are reporting $47.5 million in total damages, including both physical damage and economic losses. These businesses provided over 1,400 jobs on the day before the storm, and they now are providing only 850, representing a 42% job loss. The Dogwood Health Trust has also provided $10 million for very small businesses, but even this is not going to do it. I understand the hesitation of creating new precedent by providing grants to businesses, but unprecedented circumstances require unprecedented responses. On the worker side, we still need more help to stem the tide of evictions. Over 26,000 people in Western North Carolina filed for unemployment insurance after the storm. And those folks, many of those folks now cannot pay their rent. Over 26,000. Local sources have put money on the table for rental assistance to add to the $1 million that this body allocated, but none of those funds are actually flowing yet. And even when they do, they will not meet the need. Over 24,000 families and individuals have been displaced in Western North Carolina because of damage to their homes. 26,000. Our unwillingness to act to prevent evictions will only add to this already too large number. Some of you live in Western North Carolina. More of you have visited and seen the devastation. I don't know what else we can say to impress upon you the degree to which we will lose businesses and workers due to our failure to act robustly and quickly to meet those needs. Again, I wish I could vote for this bill. My constituents will understand why I can't, but they do not understand why my House and Senate colleagues are not hearing them and responding with the urgency and investments that they know are needed to keep our economy afloat. Thank you.
Senator Grafstein.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I want to speak on this conference report, specifically around a number of the provisions related to our court system. I have been a lawyer for nearly 30 years and have seen a lot, but there were some things in this bill that really stood out to me that I wanted to address. I was struck initially by a renewed effort to eliminate a judgeship held by Judge Brian Collins of Wake County. You may remember, the folks in the chamber who've been following some of the political litigation over the last few years, that he made a ruling that folks in the majority did not like. The same is true of Forsyth County Judge Logan Burke, and both of these men are having their seats eliminated in this bill for no apparent reason that appears on the face of the bill. The job of a judge is to, if you're doing a job, is that somebody's going to be disappointed in the outcome, right? And it may be that the more powerful person in the litigation is going to get angry. But that's why we should be protecting the independence of judges and not trying to punish them for their rulings. Targeting judges for their rulings has real autocracy vibes. Judge Collins is just one guy doing his job, and he's a nice guy, actually. He's a current constituent of mine. And I also want to just take a moment to take the opportunity to wish him well as he is recovering right now from kidney transplant surgery, as we are here taking his job away. Eliminating his judgeship and the judgeship of Judge Burke, it's the kind of personal swipe that really should be beneath the dignity of the General Assembly. But we won't have two fewer judges once this bill passes. We'll actually have two judges appointed by this body. This bill creates two new special Superior Court judgeships appointed by the General Assembly. That means that we are replacing two judgeships elected by the people of Wake and Forsyth County with appointment by this body directly usurping the power of the people of Wake and Forsyth County. The only conclusion I can draw from that is that we want to have judges, or some folks want to have judges who will be nicer to this body in litigation. It's also notable, I have to say, that we are sort of vindictively taking jobs from these two men while we're really kind of taking a pass on the opportunity to protect jobs in Western North Carolina, as Senator Mayfield was alluding to. The bill also changes vacancy appointments to the appellate courts. The North Carolina Constitution very clearly and unequivocally says that the governor fills vacancies by appointing a replacement. Full stop. This bill says he's going to only pick one approved by the Republican Party, right? That's allowing the Republican Party to pick replacements when a Republican leaves instead of the governor having free choice. It doesn't say Republican Party, I'll be honest about that. But the reality is this is clearly meant to tie the hands of a Democratic governor in a way that blatantly violates his duties and obligations under the Constitution. The governor is elected by the people. A political party is not. A governor has accountability. A political party does not. Again, this is more power being stolen from the people of this state for political gain. The bill also takes the step of undermining the independence of chief resident Superior Court judges. Now, typically, these have been the most senior judge in a particular jurisdiction. This judge will have stood for election repeatedly to achieve that seniority. Under this bill, these judges will serve in their roles at the pleasure of the Chief Justice, one person, one man, a Republican at this point. They should be serving the Constitution and the people without fear or favoritism. That's what judges should be doing. But now they have to look over their shoulders to see if the Chief Justice is happy with them and their decisions. So that's another threat to judicial independence. Finally, the bill eliminates the Courts Commission, which is a body that has been a vehicle for lawyers and judges and legislators to come together to talk about ways to make our courts better. But now it seems to me that in conjunction with all these other provisions, the goal really is just to make the courts more politically beneficial. So the Courts Commission is no longer necessary. People are calling this bill a massive power grab, right? And it is, obviously. But it's also a show of weakness, I think, because we can't seem to muster the energy or the power to take care of our neighbors in Western North Carolina without injecting politics. So we just came to make these petty swipes and act like we're here doing something, when all we're doing is moving money from one pot to another, allocating not one additional dime for Western North Carolina. If this bill got signed tonight, there'd be no relief for Western North Carolina that was tangible in the ways that $200 and something million makes it sound like. There are small provisions here that are important that could have been dealt with separately, but we're not making the massive investment we should be making. So a true show of power would have been really to come and do something bold. A true show of power would have been bringing the full capabilities of the state directly to the efforts in Western North Carolina with speed and with energy. A true show of power is not what we have here. Power would have been lifting up the people of Western North Carolina so they can rebuild, making sure their jobs are secure and their businesses could continue to function. This bill is a weak and sorry display. It shows an inability to manage not just this moment, it shows an inability to manage the emotional discipline to accept basic democratic balance. Democracy takes strength. It's hard. Accepting judgments from co-equal branches and adjusting accordingly takes thoughtfulness and restraint. It's easy to grab power with a few words in the statutes being changed. It's harder to build consensus, stay within constitutional bounds, and work together alongside people who may disagree. But that's the moral and the ethical and the democratic thing to do. This year, a couple of weeks ago, actually, I used to count the days, but 2.5 weeks ago, let's say, more people in this state in our election voted for Democrats to represent them in the General Assembly than voted for Republicans. This was true in the House and in the Senate. I'm going to say it again.
Mr. President.
Clear the gallery. These people cannot, no one here can seem to want to follow the rules. Sergeant at Arms needs to clear the gallery. Perfectly willing to stay if you're going to be quiet, but if you're not going to be quiet, that's the third time you need to go. Let's clear the gallery. Let's go.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
When the gallery is clear, we will clear. When it is clear, we will resume.
Mr. President. Mr.
President.
Mr.
I can only take one person at a time.
Mr. President, this is the people's vote.
This is the People's House.
President, I move that we take a 10-minute recess.
Mr. President,
The Senate will stand in recess for 10 minutes while these immature people are taken out.
You join out. Michael. Look, it's on your foot. It's on your foot. I'm not trying.
well, never mind.
Okay.